today's class, we will give an introduction to artificial intelligence. I am Sudeshna Sharkar in IIT Kharagpur. Now, I'd like to acknowledge some of the sources from which some of the slides are taken. Courses of CS 188, Intro to AI from UC Berkeley, CS 221 at Stanford University, and the AI course at Texas Austin are some of the places from where some of the slides are borrowed. These are the topics that I will cover. What is artificial intelligence? We'll talk about a brief history of AI, mention some of the AI paradigms, and talk about certain AI techniques. Now, as you know today, AI is used in many different domains, and AI applications have been really mind-boggling. Starting from virtual assistants like Alexa or Google Home, machine translation systems, self-driving cars. In the medical domain, the interpretation of chest x-rays, breast cancer diagnosis. There are recent data set with experiments with how COVID-19 cells respond to drugs, drug repurposing. These are just some of the applications in AI which we have seen in recent times. But the AI technology is not without risks. The deep learning computers, while training, they consume enormous amount of energy. For example, the GPT-3 system for natural language processing representation, it has 175 billion parameters, and running and training such models consume enormous amount of energy. There are different concerns about privacy, about bias, about fairness, which we will discuss in a little later. Now let us come to the definition of AI. AI has been defined in different ways. These are some definitions proposed by American Association of AI and the MIT Technology Review. For example, MIT Technology Review defines AI to be the quest to build machines that can reason, learn, and act intelligently. And some of the technologies which are common and also raise certain concerns are the technology of face recognition, different applications of machine learning, different applications in robotics, etc. Now, AI can be motivated from different points of view. For example, from the engineering viewpoint, AI is to get machines to do useful things. For example, understand spoken language, recognize people, etc. From the cognitive science viewpoint, AI is a way to understand how natural minds and mental phenomena work, such as perception, learning, language, and so on. From the philosophy viewpoint, AI is a way to explore certain philosophical questions. For example, what is consciousness, the mind-body problem, and so on. In the book Artificial Intelligence Modern Approach, Stuart Russell and Peter Norvig looked at 4 ways of defining AI. The first way is the cognitive science approach, which is AI is the science of making machines that think like people. And then the second way of defining AI is a system that acts like people, which is also what we get from the Turing test or the imitation game, which we will talk about later. Then the third way of looking at AI is a system which thinks rationally. And the fourth way is a system that acts rationally. We will talk about rationality in detail a little later. So, rationality has a long tradition dating back to Aristotle, but it is difficult to define rationality, and we will have a look at this a little later. Now, talking about the history of AI, let us talk about Turing. So, in 1950, Alan Turing published a paper called Computing Machines and Intelligence. In this paper, Turing asked the question, can machines think? and answered it with the imitation game or the Turing test. So the Turing test is formulated as follows: because one cannot really define thinking very well, so Turing proposed an operational definition of verifying this. So the setting is as follows: there's a judge C, and there are some closed rooms. In the closed room, in one of the rooms, there's a computer A, AI system A, and in another room, there's a human person B. Now, the judge can ask questions and receive answers. Based on this question answer, the judge has to decide whether the person inside the room is a person or a computer. Now, what is remarkable about this formulation is that it tries to give an operational definition of intelligence which is actionable. Now, whether the Turing test itself is important or not, this sort of separation from the specification of the system and the how of the system, this is very important. Now let us see how the term AI came to be coined. So in 1956, John McCarthy organized a conference at the Dartmouth College. This is called the Dartmouth Conference, and in this, several luminaries in the field attended the conference. And in the summer of 1956, they had different discussions, and during this, the term AI was coined. The objective of the Dartmouth Conference was to unify the various research efforts that were going on in automata theory, in cybernetics, in complex information processing, and to see how machines can be given the ability to think. Now, the paper that they published in the conference proposed that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can in principle be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. This was a time when computers had just come into being, and they were being, people were starting to use them to and trying to find out how they can develop intelligent systems. And following this, there was a lot of different activity and the first seeds of different AI systems. Also, many optimistic claims were made at that time. For example, Herbert Simon made this claim that machines will be capable within 20 years of doing any work that humans can do. Marvin Minsky proposed that in 3 to 8 years will have a machine with the general intelligence of an average human being. Also, in those early days, there were a lot of successes. The first machine learning program was written by Arthur Samuel in 1952, which could play checkers at the level of an advanced amateur. Newell and Simon, who later on went on to win a Nobel Prize in Economics, they developed the logic theorist, and this system was able to prove a theorem, a known theorem, but they were able to prove the theorem in a very elegant way. And they later on developed the general problem solver. So during this time, there was a lot of optimism about AI, and a lot of early AI programs were developed. Then there was the geometry engine by Gelantner and so on, Robinson's algorithm for logical reasoning, etc. In parallel, during that time, there was a lot of work on the early days of neural networks, but that we will talk about separately. Then the story goes that this optimism was followed by disappointment. And the story goes that, at that time there was a lot of interest in developing machine translation system. And there was a lot of interest in translating English to Russian. Now, the story goes that DARPA had lot of funded the program for machine translation, and when this machine translation system was evaluated, And this particular sentence was given to the system: the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak, which was translated to Russian and back to English. And the folklore says that the translation that you get at the end is: the vodka is good but the meat is rotten. Actually, a nice translation, but it failed to impress the evaluators. And the ALPAC report ended the government funding on machine translation. Now, why did AI at that time not live up to expectations? The problem was that during this time, the computation was limited. The way the problems were formulated, the search space was exponential, and therefore only toy problems could be attempted. There was limited information, and the complexity of AI systems at scale could not be realized. But though AI was not solved, a lot of interesting contributions to computer science came out of it. Now came the first AI winter. During this time, also in UK, the Lighthill report was published in 1974, which criticized the failure of AI to achieve the grand objectives. So, just to give a perspective, during the similar time, Richard Karp famously came up with set of 20 odd difficult problems in computer science, known to be NP complete. And these highlighted the problem of combinatorial explosion, where the computing time required to solve the problems increased exponentially as the function of the size of the input. So this also meant that it was impossible to scale up the AI solutions from toy problems to something which is useful. People also realize that while tasks like playing checkers or chess, which appear to be difficult to humans, AI systems could actually do well on those tasks. But tasks which human babies learn in a few years, such as learning to speak, learning to see, learning to navigate, those tasks prove to be difficult for computers. Now, again, there was a big boom in AI with the advent of the expert systems. In the 70s to 80s, there was a lot of emphasis on knowledge-based systems. In expert system, the expert knowledge is encoded into rules, so that using the rules, the automated systems can solve different problems. And during this time, various expert systems were developed, such as Dendral, which could infer molecular structure from mass spectrometry; Mycene in the domain of medicine, which could diagnose blood infections and recommend antibiotics; XCON, and so on. Now, over this next decade, the AI industry boomed. These expert systems became very popular. There were specialized systems that could simulate human decision-making ability by taking input from the human experts. However, during this time, desktop computers came into being, and the Lisp machines, which the AI industry had put their funds on, they became redundant. And these expert systems also proved to be too expensive to maintain, and because they required rules to be hand coded, they were not easy to update. The systems could not learn, etc. And it led to the collapse of the AI industry. And it's also because knowledge as deterministic rules were not really rich enough to capture the different nuances of the world as well as the uncertainties. And this time there was the next AI winter. Now, I will pause a bit, and so far, the history that we have looked at is the history of symbolic AI. At the same time, there had been work going on in the connectionist approach to AI, which is the neural paradigm. A third paradigm is the statistical paradigm. So these are the three paradigms, three important paradigms of AI. Let us look at the connectionist paradigm and its history. Now, in 1943, a neuroscientist McCulloch and a logician Pitts, they developed the first artificial neural networks, which related neural circuitry of the brain with mathematical logic. So they developed the theory, the first theory of artificial neural networks. And this is sort of the root of the current day deep learning and neural network. In 1949, Hebb defined a learning rule, and in 1958, Rosenblatt created the perceptron learning algorithm, which is the simplest type of neural network containing only one layer of neurons. And during this time, the New York Times had sensational coverage of this. The embryo of an electronic computer that the Navy expects will be able to walk, talk, see, write, reproduce itself, and be conscious of its existence. Actually, it's not very far from the truth, but it was not the day of the neural networks yet. This picture on the right is the first implementation of the perceptron in the Mark I computer, Mark I perceptron machine, and this could recognize images with a 20 by 20 pixel camera. Now, however, this euphoria was short-lived. In 1969, there was this book which was published, which was called The Perceptrons by Minsky and Papert. This was actually a very nice book. There was a lot of mathematical analysis. This showed that linear models, linear classifiers could not solve the XOR problem. So the XOR problem is a problem where you try to see if both the inputs are of the same sign or not. This is a very simple problem, but it cannot be represented by a one-layer neuron, though it can be represented by a two-layer network. But somehow this result really captured the imagination of the people, and this killed off neural net research. And so there was a downhill in neural network research. Later, this connectionism, again, there was a revival starting from the 1980s. For example, in 1980, Neurocognitron, which is a sort of early days of convolutional neural network for images, came into being. In 1986, the backpropagation algorithm was reinvented for training multi-layer networks. In 1989, for example, Jan LeCun made an application for the US Postal Service for recognizing handwritten digits, which was deployed there to recognize zip codes. So this is one of the success stories, the initial success stories of neural networks. Now, then there was again, following this second AI winter, there has been another big time explosive growth in AI. And there have been a lot of claims. For example, the famous saying by Andrew Ng that AI is the new electricity, and the feeling that the hardware advances, the computing algorithms, etc., will lead to an explosion of more computational power and faster networks, and which will be used to solve many problems. Now, deep learning is deep neural networks containing many layers, which are very powerful and can represent different types of problems. So a lot of progress in deep learning was made in 2006, unsupervised layer-wise pre-training. Through that, one could develop deep networks. In 2012, AlexNet came into being, which did well on the ImageNet problem. 2016, there was a sensational alpha. The Go is a very difficult game. The AlphaGo by DeepMind, using deep reinforcement learning, could defeat the world Go champion. On the other hand, in the statistical AI, if you wish, there had been a lot of progress on borrowing from different fields. For example, linear regression was developed in 1801, linear classification in 1936, uniform cost search for shortest paths by Dijkstra in 1956, Markov decision process in 1957. So these are certain early ideas which came to be embraced by AI. On the statistical machine learning front in 1985, Judea Pearl developed the theory of Bayesian network and probabilistic reasoning. In 1995, Cortes and Vapnik came up with the support vector machine. So this slide from Peter Stone and Zhu show the left curve shows the reality of scientific progress in AI, and the right one shows the ups and downs in the perception of AI system. Now, as we said, following the definition of Russell, that the AI system is one of acting rationally or making rational decisions. So what does the term rational mean? So rational means to be maximally optimal in achieving predefined goals. So rationality does not look at how the decisions were made, but what are the actions which are being taken. And goals are expressed in terms of the utility of the outcomes, and they define rationality as the way of maximizing one's expected utility. Now, the study of AI is about studying intelligent agents. An agent is an entity that that functions in the world or the environment. It can sense the sense observations from the environment, and it can take actions which affect the environment. Now, a rational system, the actions of the agent, that depend on how you measure the performance of the system, what prior or background knowledge of the environment or the world the system has, what are the actions which are available to the agent, and what is it that the agent can observe now, or what is the history of its perceptions. Now, the intelligent agent can be characterized in 4 dimensions, which is defined as PEAS. So P stands for performance measure, how you define how good the system is. E stands for environment. A for the actuators, what type of actions the agent can take. And S for sensors, what are the inputs that the agent gets. So this picture is of a game called the Pac-Man. So for the Pac-Man game, one can define the performance measure. So you want to end the game early, so there is a negative -1 penalty per step. You get +10 reward when you get food, +500 when you win the game, -500 if you die and without completing the game, +200 if you hit the ghost. So this is how you define the performance measure for this game. The environment is the dynamics of this game world. The actions available to the agent are going north, south, east, and west, and the agent can see the entire world. Let us look at another agent, which is an automated taxi. For the taxi, the performance measure incorporates different aspects. For example, what is the profit or income of the taxi, whether the customer is satisfied, what is the cost of the vehicle, fines, the penalty, etc. Environment is the city streets, the other drivers, the other vehicles, the customers. Actuators are the steering, brake, fuel, display, etc. Sensors are camera, radar, accelerometer, and so on. The environments can be of different types. Environment can be fully or partially observable. For example, in the Pac-Man, you can see the entire environment, but the taxi cannot see the complete environment because it doesn't know what lies in the other intersection in the other roads. There can be a single agent system or a multi-agent system. The dynamics can be deterministic or stochastic. The world can be static or dynamic, discrete or continuous, and so on. I'll not go into the details right now. Now, let us look at what are the three pillars on which the discipline of AI stands. The three important pillars are modeling, inferencing, and learning. So modeling is what, when you take a real world problem which you want to solve and you want to abstract them into a formal object on which you can do inferencing or run your algorithms. So modeling involves abstraction into what you care for and a good way of representing it. So for modeling, you go from a real world task to a formal task or model. For example, so if you want to find your path and your actual world comprises of busy city street and you have the map, etc. So if you want to model, if you want to find the shortest path from your current place to the destination, you have to abstract it and find out what are the different roads, what they're connected to, and you can build an abstraction on which you can solve the problem. Now, abstraction is the process of getting the essence, and it is the hard part of problems being solved. This is a quotation by Rodney Brooks in 1991. Now, what you do is that you go from the real world problem to an abstract problem, which you can solve using the machinery and tools that you are there at your disposal. And from the abstract solution, you can interpret and get to an actual solution of the problem. Now, another important thing is how you represent the problem. When you take a problem, the way you represent it has an impact on how efficiently you can solve the problem. Also, when you want to represent the system, you want to make use of the knowledge that you have, which has a bearing to the solution of the system. So abstraction and representation are extremely important for modeling. The next, let us look at inference. Once you have a model, the task of inference is to answer questions with respect to the model. For example, suppose you are given the model of a city, you could ask questions such as, what is the shortest path? What is the cheapest path? So the focus of inference is on efficient algorithms that can answer these questions. And given the model, one wants to find a model so that on this, these questions can be answered by efficient algorithms. Now, you want to separate what you want to compute, that's a part of modeling, and from once you have the model, you compute on the model by having this prediction algorithms. So, for example, this is a model. You have a model of the map, and you have the different places and the paths between these places and their costs. And you want to find the shortest path from one place to another, source to the destination. So, you run an inference algorithm that will find the shortest path. The third pillar is learning. So, where do you get the model? The real world is quite messy, very complex. So, if a model has to be faithful, the model must be rich, but it is very difficult to capture to write down the model manually. So, the idea behind this is where machine learning comes into play. The idea behind machine learning is to build the model for data. So instead of manually constructing a model, you can construct a skeleton of a model or a class of models, and then you can use machine learning to learn the parameters of the model. So this paradigm allows us to bridge the gap between the logical AI and statistical or data-driven AI. So in learning, we can go from a model without parameters to a model with parameters. Now coming to classical symbolic AI, these are some of the steps of an intelligent agent. So the intelligent agent acts this is also called a deliberative paradigm of intelligence. So there's an environment from which the agent receives sensory input or perception, and then it goes to model. Using the model, it finds a plan. Using the plan, the system can act, and the act impacts the environment. Now we will talk about different topics which one can study in the field of artificial intelligence. So one set of topics that you will study are the state-based models. So there are different types of state-based models. For example, search problems, which are models where you are operating in an environment where there is no uncertainty. Then you have adversarial games, where you're operating in an environment where you have an opponent, and you do not have a control on what actions the opponent is going to do. The third type of state-based model is when you are acting against nature. So the consequences of your actions are stochastic rather than deterministic. So when you roll a dice, so with some probability you will get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So this is the outcome is stochastic. So these can be modeled, for example, by Markov decision processes. So these are some of the types of state-based models.